Good evening, viewers. The Idea Factory is back with a new and exciting program. As we have already told you, 2023 is bigger, better, and more connected to the market. And we hope we are able to offer you programs and services that suits your needs. Today we have a very exciting panel with us, and we are having a panel discussion. And the discussion is titled "Thought Leadership Conclave." As you are aware, Thought Leadership is a signature program that Idea Factory is building up over time. And there have been multiple sessions where we have talked about thought leadership as a futuristic block of building India and the world economy. So today we have got distinguished speakers with us, and we will take the discussion of thought leadership forward. Today in our panel we have Mr. Rajiv Raghunath and Mr. Pritam Onsker. Mr. Rajiv Raghunath is a thought leadership, business and policy research and communications consultant associated with industry bodies, corporates and startups, think tank organizations, media houses, and academic institutions in India and overseas. He works with CXOs across industries for their thought leadership and marketing communications with curated content like keynotes and speech drafts, presentations, media articles, case studies, and marketing collaterals. Rajiv has deep professional engagements with industry bodies like Confederation of Indian Industry, Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, and International Chamber of Commerce, with companies like Wipro Infotech and Maxwell, and also in academic institutions like Tel Aviv University, among others. Rajiv is also a consultant for international conferences like the annual CII Exim Bank Conclave on India Africa Project Partnership, India Latin America and Caribbean Conference, India Europe 29 Business Conference, India Cambodia Laos Vietnam Myanmar Business Forum, India MSME Summit, Outdoor Advertising Convention. This entails planning the conference themes, knowledge papers, and detailed outcome reports. Rajiv is the managing editor of advertising publications Media for Growth and Outdoor Asia, and engages with out-of-home and digital out-of-home media organizations across global markets. He is the founder and CEO of Well-Versed Media, a content communications and research firm. Rajiv is a speaker in international conferences hosted by the think tank organizations Horasis. In the early part of his 27 years professional career, Rajiv worked with mainline business dailies, Economic Times, Financial Express, and Financial World at senior editorial positions. Financial Services Group India Bulls and KPO Evaluaserve. He holds master's and MPhil degrees in international studies from Jawaharlal Nehru University. He is also an alumnus of St. Joseph's College, Bangalore. We welcome Mr. Rajiv to this forum.
Thank you so much, Abir.
We are also joined by Mr. Pritam Onsker. Mr. Pritam Onsker is an independent consultant and a founder and CEO at TaylorSmart.in and BrunchBites.in. He is also an elected member of CIN National Startup Council of Goa. In terms of his recent recognitions, he is recognized as the 100 Best Marketing Minds of India 2018-19 by Enterprise IT World. He is also recognized as the 100 Most Influential Marketing Leaders of India by World Marketing Congress in November 2018. He was recognized as the 100 Best Marketing Minds of India 2017-18 by Enterprise IT World. As a part of MECAA leadership team, he is responsible to lead and develop the region with a special focus on growth services like Move, their IoT platform, MSS, cloud managed hosting services, and unified communication. Building partner ecosystem, which is a mix of both service providers and B2B SIs with sharp focus on segments collaborations with OEMs for a joint GTM strategy. Apart from this, he has an all-round experience with a 2-year stint in marketing as a head of marketing for India and SAARC. Prior to the same, another 2-year stint in corporate strategy based in Singapore, with a mandate to build and execute emerging markets and global access with an exposure to working with the Big Four for a possible M&A. We welcome Mr. Pritam Onsker to this platform.
Thank you, Abir. Thanks a lot. Happy to be here.
Thank you. With this brief introduction, we will start a small discussion on Thought Leadership Day. And some basic thoughts. I will just initiate the discussion and then I will pass it on to my distinguished speakers. We will start the discussion as we know that 2023 has just started and there's a lot of optimism around because it's a new year and a lot of things are in place. We are coming out of the COVID, the countries are competing with each other, and 2023 is a very exciting year. Just now the budget is also over, so we are also excited to see how the budget pans out for the whole year and what it means to the business climate. Just a small snapshot of what is happening in the world around. First of all, we are not, while we are all gung-ho in spirit, in reality, the world economy is not very strong either. The pandemic is still not over, even after 2-3 years. There are pockets where the pandemic is still there, it's coming on, but off, and the world is not fully COVID-free. To add to that, there is the war in Ukraine, which is impacting the world for a very large extent because the war is going on for a very long period of time. And that is also impacting the inflation cost. So worldwide, the economies are, at least the developed economies, are not doing well at all. And it is projected to slow further. There are no clear symptoms that they have been able to come out of the COVID situations in 2023 also. And though there are pockets where there are signs of resilience, yet overall the global economy, there is a momentum kind of thing. In terms of the growth engines or in terms of the growth pattern, China and India are well protected and they are projected as the major growth engines this year. In terms of the Indian economy, as we have said, that India is aspiring to be the leading in recovery. So we are upbeat about our growth in terms of various. Most of the business leaders are upbeat about their Indian growth and confident in the growth of their own companies. And put together, I think that's a good signal. The economy is also showing signs of strength in certain areas. And more importantly, with the COVID happening, I think India is slowly becoming an alternative manufacturing destination of the world. And it is up to us how to utilize this opportunity as a manufacturing destination. Today, the RBI expects India's growth to be 7% in 2023 and 24. With this as a short backdrop and not too much on the budget at this moment, I would invite the speakers to share their thoughts on the business outlook. Mr. Rajiv, Raghunath, if you want to share some thoughts on the same.
Sure. Thank you, Abir. I think you've already set the tone for the discussion and you've given a very interesting outlook of how the business will pan out in India and, of course, the global economy as such. To be able to understand the industrial sectors that we would look at, and perhaps more particularly with regard to the micro, small, and medium enterprises, the context, in my view, becomes an important part. And that context comes from the business outlook that we would have for 2023, 2024. The RBI, of course, has forecast 7%, but more recently, when the economic survey came out, I think they have slightly reduced the forecast to about 6 to 6.8. So it'll probably settle at about 6.5% is what I got to understand. But at 6.5%, that itself is a very, very promising situation for India, and which is why India has been described as the bright spot on the world map. Because according to the World Bank forecast for the global economy, I think that's at about 1.7%. So this, as I understand, is the third lowest growth rate that we are seeing after 2008-9, 2020, and now 2022. So while across the world we are seeing signs of slowdown, India, I think, is powering ahead, and I think forecast at 6.5% GDP growth annually is a very, very good sign. Although, one can say that there is also a low base effect. So the environment is extremely good. And I think India is, in any case, making the headlines. And of course, it needs to be mentioned that we also have the presidency of the G20 for this year. So greater global responsibilities, and with that also comes greater global attention on the Indian economy. Recently, there was a report that said that for some years, about pre-pandemic, government had set a target of achieving $5 trillion economy by 2025, but nobody knew that there was something called the COVID pandemic that would come in and spoil the situation for India and the rest of the world. But it's very interesting to see that the chief economic advisor, Mr. V. Anantha Nagaswaran, has actually forecast that India will get to become a 7 trillion economy by 2030. So that is a very, very bullish outlook on how the Indian economy is going to grow. So I think the overall situation looks pretty nice. And if you look at some of the other indicators, inflation was a very big concern for India, like it had been for the entire world. And it had peaked at about, I think, 7.8% in April 2022. And that has now come down to about 5.7 or 5.8 in December, and is expected to get to 5% by April 2023. That is in the first quarter of 23-24. That will be, when we achieve that, will be quite a very, that will be a very good positive sign. Why? Because when we look at the micro, small, and medium enterprises, I think inflation can be one killer, for them. And if that can be contained, I think the sector is going to look really good. Why, in my view, the micro, small MSME is extremely important is because I believe the estimates are like they make up about 99.8% of all businesses, and making up about a third of the GDP and contributing to a significant share of the factory output and exports. So this sector has a tremendous importance. And what has happened, I believe, in the pandemic period is that the sector was going slow in its transformation, but the COVID pandemic and the situations actually have triggered a certain change in this sector as well. That many of these businesses are now opening up to the adoption of technology and going the digital way, which should actually bring in a lot of efficiency into this sector and improve the productivity. What is true of MSME, of course, will be true of the larger economy as such. It's very good to see that in the budget that was presented by the finance minister in the Lok Sabha, they have made significant allocations for MSME. I think it has gone up quite significantly to about 22,000 odd crore to MSME, jumped from about 15,000 odd crore. So that's, I think, a very good sign. And importantly, this the credit guarantee scheme has been revamped, by which 9,000 crore has been given for that. And I believe that will result in some 2 lakh crore collateral-free loans. We need all of these things to actually provide the necessary spark to this particular sector. Why I'm harping so much on the MSME sector is because this, this accounts for a very large percentage of the national economy. Now, of course, there are other schemes that the government has announced. I won't go deep into that. But suffice to say that at a time when India had been focusing for quite a while to boost our manufacturing share of GDP to about 25% of GDP, which, of course, we are still quite some distance away from that. One very important scheme that was introduced in the pandemic period was the PLI, the Productivity Linked Incentive, production linked incentives. Now, under that, they had identified a certain select number of industries under which these schemes would be provided. Now that is also getting expanded. Many of that will cascade to some good opportunities for MSME. Today, as MSMEs look towards technology and become more digital, I think their footprints in areas like development of IoT and robotics, and that will all be the frontier areas where MSME businesses should necessarily go toward, and where the youth power will really be leveraged to the hill. So all I can say is that I think the overall environment is very promising. This could indeed be the defining period. And if we can get all the pieces together, it and build the right kind of ecosystem supported by participation in global and regional value chains, I think as an economy would be rocking. Thank you.
That's wonderful. That's the hope and that's the promise that we are looking at, and that's how India should be able to lead the recovery cycle. Mr. Pritam, your thoughts on the same topic?
Yeah, so I will not bore your audience with the numbers, and to be all credit to Rajiv that he's covered all the numbers so extensively and so very well. So thank you, Rajiv. You made my life much more easier. But I'll look at the execution part of it, right? I mean, there is no doubt about the fact that the way the World Economic Forum looks at us, or some of the international bodies are writing about us. It's mainly because of two things, right? One is the internal consumption, and the secondly, the trust deficit with China, which is forcing a lot of companies to move into India. So it sounds like a double whammy, but it all depends on how much we as a country are able to benefit out of it, and it will all depend on execution. As Rajiv rightly called out, there are numerous of these schemes for MSMEs, etc. But is it really reaching the MSME bottom line? Yes or no? That's the big question, according to me. Because I've seen, and having worked with the startup ecosystem for a long time now, ever since my Tata role got over in 2021, I've seen that there are a lot of states who are taking initiatives, and there are a lot of states who should take more initiatives, right? So there are both sides of the coin which are available. But in the overall scheme of things, I think there is a much larger push which is required, at least for the Indian MSME sector and the startup sector to play a much larger part. We think, okay, so many MSME, 5 lakh MSMEs registered, that's a great job done. But learn from China, right? I mean, they have maybe those many companies in just one sector, let's say furniture, for example, or electronics, for example, or textile, for example. I think they have created hubs and hubs. So hence they are close to 10 plus years ahead of us. And if we are going to benefit out of the opportunity that the whole scheme of things has offered to us, I think we will need a larger effort than what we are doing. Again, I am not pointing out to the government, or I'm not pointing out to any bodies, but we as companies, we as startups, we as creating entrepreneurs. And that's where I think Abir, thoughts like yours, right, where you're talking about Idea Factory to be helping people to have more entrepreneurs. That mindset change is something that needs to be driven, I think, more at the school level, at the college level, etc., etc. I go to so many schools and colleges, and first question I ask is, how many of you are here to get a degree to get a job? And 95% of the people will put their hand up. That itself is our failure, according to me, and that itself will push us back and will hold us from making these dreams come true. In fact, I'm more bullish in that sense. I think that for us, there's an opportunity to do a 10% growth. Why not? You tell me which other country which can offer you land, people, skills at a cost that we are offering in the world right now, and which country can the world depend on? If there is, and this is a real case study that I've seen when I was in Singapore, and I used to interact with a lot of international bodies because we were looking to acquire a few companies, and this is a message used to come from them when they used to say that, okay, there are 5 Chinese company presenting a product and there's 1 Indian company presenting a product. The trust factor with the Indian company is definitely higher, and it's all it could be just mental, and it could be just their own experiences. And I'm talking about organizations like Slovakia or Sweden or these kind of organizations which are not like in thick ties with us, right? The ones in thick ties will always talk good about us, but these are countries which are not having those thick ties, yet they believe in India more than anybody else. So when we have all these to offer, what is the thing that only stops us? It's our mentality, I think. So if we change that mentality from being an employee to being an employer, I think that will drive the economy much faster than anything else, right? All the resources are available. Now, look at the EV market, for example. war shuru ho gaya, so obviously it is impacted, right? We will have 1 million less EV vehicles this year as per forecast. And this is the impact of just the war. And there are so many other volatilities which are there in the market. So we have to be ready for all of this, right? It's not just about, launching a company, but, and I've seen in that space also, I have seen some very good aggression, right? So there is a company in India itself who has been able to do 82% of EV work out of India and not depend so much on the outside world for supply of parts, batteries, and so on and so forth. They are in fact getting the batteries also done in India. So if there is an initiative, all these things, 1 lakh less EV vehicles, etc., can be beaten. But do we have the mindset to do that is the question, I would say. And execution, in my view, is the key in every sector. In every sector, if you pick up any sector today, you will see the demand, whether it is internal or external. You see demand in steel, which is more external in nature, demand in finance, which is more internal in nature, and so on and so forth. So you can pick up and see that you will always find demand in pockets. Are you able to capitalize on that? That's the answer, yes or no. If you're able to capitalize on that, probably you will reach 9-10% or even more. But again, I'll stop by saying that to achieve the growth of the numbers that Rajiv called out, or the support which is there from the government, it has to start from us and not from outside.
Right. I think it's a wonderful thought process coming from both of you. While both are correct in their own way, because I think I also belong to the same school of thought, which connects to both of you. First of all, in the job scene when I was connected, I think that globalization had reached India. So all the MNCs were in India, and there were so many jobs around. So to that extent, and when that MNC started not doing well, when their global economy, their own in-house economies were not doing well, these jobs began to dry up because we were over-dependent. We thought India was growing because MNCs were creating jobs for India. But their creation of jobs in India was dependent on their own growth paradigm, which may or may not be the same all the time. So that way, I think our over-dependence, the FDI model, I think fell short at some point in time. And therein the wave shifted to growth of businesses within hometown, which is the startups and the MSME. So actually, we need a bit of both. I wouldn't say that we are going to shift gear from the entire MNC dependence on the outside world, because we have already opened the doors for globalization. Okay, so most of you cannot count the number of big names. Most of them are in India. Of course, some of them have closed shop in recent times. It's okay, but that would happen all the time. Okay, there will be companies who will do well, and there will be companies who will not do well. So on one hand, we are opening doors for global organizations to set up shop in India. The recent news is iPhone. I think they were in talks for such a long period of time, and today iPhone is in India. I don't know, about a decade they have been talking and deferring the whole process of starting business. They missed the entire telecom revolution that has happened. So they have come at a time when the telecom revolution is over. But still they have come. Similarly, there are, so one way there will be MNCs we would want that globalization to happen. We would want to equally we would want to export also, because the global economy is not doing well. Those doors are not here. So we would, even if we have startups or MSMEs, we want to export. So not only we want inward, we also want outward, and also grow businesses from within. So together, it's a kind of a, there is no optimum mix, which how much is what. But of course, the wave has moved to homegrown businesses, because we have realized we cannot depend on the outside world for a perennial growth. And growing from them doesn't mean actual growth. It is like a virtual growth. It may not be a long-term growth. For long-term growth, we definitely have to build our own businesses. So rightly said by both of you, I think we have to accept the fact that business outlook is optimistic. There are growth opportunities, but we have to tap homebound, domestic consumption, domestic growth, domestic jobs, and also open the doors for outside. So whenever they are willing, they should be able to come. But that does not mean that we will fall apart in case they cannot grow in a particular period of time. Okay, with that as the backdrop, we shift gear to the next topic, which is innovation and ideas, which is a kind of the main thought process behind the idea, and whether innovation, to what extent startups and MSMEs are helping in contributing to the innovation landscape of the country. I think that is a very important scape, because the more businesses you grow, they are definitely changing habits. Especially in the COVID period, and as you rightly said, like you bypass the physical infrastructure, you go the digital way. But even if you go digital way, you see how Byju's is falling like 9 pins. I mean, they thought this is going to be the long-lasting thing, and see how it is falling like 9 pins. So it's not so hunky-dory. It is a pendulum shift. It will be between digital and the physical. It's a hybrid model. We will have to course correct the situations, and towards that, I know I'll just share some points on the innovation and startups landscape. One minute, please. Yes, nothing much on the innovation, but just to remind that, of course, startups and MSMEs that are driving change, they are actually bringing some innovation and change in the country. I mean, while these are all some of the names that have picked it up, I think we are all using some of these services. At least from my side, we are using the pharmacy, and we are using the homebound medicine, which we were not doing it till some time back. We would go to the retail pharmacy to buy things, but now they are coming in house, and they are coming with a lot of complications. Like there is insulin that is coming cold packed at home through them. So pharmacy, and even Tata One and Jigo. Also there is and also let us talk about Swiggy as well, because we know how things are getting delivered at our own home through Swiggy, and how wonderfully they have empowered the individual to receive products and services without stepping out of the home. I think the best part that COVID has done is to build businesses around it, so that people can receive services at their home, and they can increase the last mile connectivity of businesses. Of course, that has created a line of delivery boys, that has created a line of a lot of bottom of the pyramid jobs, but at the same time it empowers the customer to get things at his own convenience, 24/7. No timing issue, no payment issue. There are refund policies in place. It has taken time, but at the back end of it, there is an IT revolution that has worked at the back end. There is a telecom revolution that is backed in the back end, and we are enjoying these online services. Most of these services that we are talking today, which are success stories, are essentially conversion of offline services to online, the organized method of receiving offline services to online. And that's a wonderful change that is being driven by the startups ecosystem. But when we are talking of innovation, it should be more than that. I'm sure there are habit changes happening, but there are a lot of intelligence, a lot of thoughts that should essentially go into innovation and change. And with that, I would open up the doors to talk, maybe Mr. Rajiv, if you want to throw some light on this.
Sure, Abir, thank you. Absolutely, innovation is a must, right? There are no two ways about it. And some of those innovations and the introduction of services like what you mentioned, in a way triggered by the pandemic situation also, that paved the way for a market to develop for such services. And I think those entrepreneurs capitalized on that opportunity, and I think they've done well. However, I think today when we are looking at R&D and innovation, we need to have greater achievements on the manufacturing front. On the manufacturing front, I think we need clearly demonstrated successes there. And that is where I think the MSMEs have a very, very instrumental role to play. There aren't too many examples that we can straight off mention. I'm sure there are. Maybe I'm not fully aware of them. But the kind of things that, that Pritam talked about, the examples of China, or we can even talk about, how business, the small enterprises or innovation companies have contributed to the growth and development, like in Israel, right? I think we need to develop the innovation ecosystem much more that is directed toward manufacturing growth. One more important part, even today, as we are seeing a lot of infrastructure investments taking place in this country, and especially even in this budget, they have directed sharp focus on that. at the earliest possible, we should be able to reduce the logistics costs. When companies are participating in the value chains, and logistics becomes a very, very important part. Globally, I think the efficient logistics cost would be about 7 to 8% of GDP. In India, it is hovering at, I think, about 12 to 13%. So that's a long way before we can reduce the logistics costs. When that comes down, I think we will see greater participation of innovative companies in the manufacturing spectrum, which is a dire need for the country. So I think that needs a lot of concentrated efforts. I wouldn't add any other point right now.
Right. Mr. Pritam, you would like to add some points to this?
Yeah, so I concur with the Rajiv on the fact that after agriculture, it is the manufacturing sector which actually creates a lot of job. And now with the startup ecosystem coming in, I think one of the names I would have loved to see on your slide was delivery, right? So delivery, the way they have transformed themselves, the new IPO, they are doing pretty well there as well, and the kind of jobs that they're creating on the ground, just like Swiggy or anybody else, right? So those, and it also solved the logistic problem which Rajiv just mentioned, right? And they're going aggressive at it, and luckily they have moved their headquarters to Goa, so I know them pretty closely. So one is this aspect. The second aspect is, I think, while some of the startups have got it right and are going the right way, and obviously, a lot of external investment is also looking at India as the bright spot. So obviously, the money also is coming in from a lot of international investors. And by the way, there are smaller companies from smaller countries who are wanting to enter into India, right? And they have some fantastic technology, which will also help our growth, right? So it's a balance. So whether it's a homegrown technology or the external technology which we are importing and adding to the Make in India story that we have, I think it can be a very killer combination, right? Because there are certain technologies which are, ahead and are available in the developed or the developing countries, which we can benefit out of. And there are certain technologies that we are developing, which those countries can benefit out of. So it's about finding the right balance so that the startup ecosystem can play that kind of a role when it comes to building the economy. That's one. The second thing I would say about this innovation or startup ecosystem is there is a lot of innovation happening in India, right? But the fight is about valuation versus value. Unfortunately, we are getting trapped into valuations, which is a wrong thing to do, according to me. Obviously, we have seen the results of what it does to some of the companies who are now, and you took some names, I wouldn't take names, but there are companies which are bleeding, and there are companies which are letting people go, and these are new age companies, right? And there is a constant promise of that we will be profitable, we will be, and now suddenly you see that those companies are not even saying we'll be profitable. And that's the sad part of it. And I feel that if there is innovation happening, the business has to be built on the merit of that innovation, and not on the value that we are valuation that we are running after. Because then the only thing that you learn then is the burn rate. Aapka every month ka burn rate kya hai, that is where we are focused, rather than building a profitable business. So even if you look at the two startups that we have built, one based out of Pune and one based out of Goa, we are zero capex. We are capex light. We don't operate on any capex, by the way, and the money comes in first, so we are cash flow negative always. And customers are willing to pay you if you are giving that value to them. That's why I say value is more powerful than valuation. Valuation can be built, but value is purely based on the innovation and the kind of service that you are going to offer. So two things. One is that the balance of whether we should import a technology or export a technology and help the larger sectors that we have, which is agri and manufacturing, as called out by Rajiv also. And then the second thing is, how do we parallelly build and help the MSME sector and the startup ecosystem? MSME sector, because MSME fears going digital, right? Because the moment you tell them, boss, go digital, they mean, oh, so much of cost. But there are so many companies who are offering at zero cost or as a SaaS model. So how do you then educate them and get them to become digital, right? So the moment they become digital, they will obviously hire more people, create more value, etc., etc. And the third thing rather for the startups is that don't go after valuation, build that value. You will automatically be successful.
Right, right. It was a wonderful thought process from both sides, and again, both of the sides can be taken. We can take from both of them, because on one side, while you said that it is asset light, and you go digital, and that makes it easier. Real innovation will again you have to bank on manufacturing for that, because real backbone of a country will only be developed through the manufacturing processes. While you will still sway on the modern businesses, but also manufacturing has to be built. And if you have to do manufacturing, you have to do research. And if you have to do research, there is no guarantee. So the entire valuation game or whatever. But you have rightly said that innovation we have still not reached a stage where we can measure innovation, where we can measure how much value that you're going to add. If you go to Michael Porter, that same concept, that whole model of value chain analysis, we can't put numbers to it. But perhaps we should do it now. Maybe Idea Factory should be able to do it now. We have to put numbers to innovation. Just
And
to,
just to add, Amir, if I may, so if you look at